Right. Hello. So the bishop has been delayed because at the last minute the archbishop wanted him to do something else, but he hopefully will pop in for a bit. So we'll start. So I think probably we ought to go round the room and say who we are, where we've come from. But before we do that, I will just introduce myself and what we're doing. So, I am Father Stephen Maxfield. I am the parish priest for about the next 6 weeks of Shrewsbury. After that I'm going to retire, but I'm not retiring from this, what happened was that in 2003, Father John Nankivell, who was the priest in Walsall, and I thought we ought to do some kind of extra education for people who've been received into the Orthodox Church, so anybody could come, to give them a bit more. Because there is a problem with converts. I'm a convert, so I know about these problems. There are problems where you read the stuff, you go to church, you get received, and you get to a sort of plateau. and you sit on that plateau, not really learning much more, and not therefore able to partake of all the riches that the Orthodox Church has to offer. You are stuck and you need to go on. So we thought, right, what we'll do is we will run a course, and we did that. Well, that went quite well. We then got an academic to help us, and then we decided that we would go under University of Lampeter, who would accredit our certificate and diploma. That worked all right, except that they wanted us to do everything as a module. So there are subjects which we will teach, like canon law, and we don't actually want to do 10 sessions on canon law. There may be people who need to do 10 sessions, or probably 50 sessions on canon law, but that's not what actually we're about. We needed, say, 5. So that was one problem. The other problem was that they were rather expensive, and then the third problem was that they went mad and decided that all their lecturers had to be able to speak Welsh, and if they couldn't speak Welsh, they had to go. So we were turfed out. So we're now back to where we were, and we are running, therefore, 2 courses. We're running a certificate course, which is basic church history, church theology, a little bit of pastoral stuff, a bit of ethics and so on, so that you've gone to the next stage, so that if you want to go on to the diploma, it's 1 year. If you want to go on to the diploma, it's 2 years, and then you go into all the subjects in a much deeper level. But even so, you are not going to know it all. I have been a priest now for 39 years, and there is not a week that goes past when I do not learn something more about the Orthodox Church. One of the things that we all need to do is read and read and read, because we are faced with a number of things which are very difficult and a number of things that are good. So the difficult things are that Orthodox books historically are produced in fairly small print runs. So that means that they go out of print remarkably quickly. So a print run of 5,000 would be considered to be quite a large print run. And 5,000 books over the English-speaking part of the world will go out of print probably in 4 or 5 years. And then they say it's not worth printing it again. So that's one problem. Another problem is that there's a lot available on the internet, some of which is good, and some of which is bizarre. And you may, if you're starting out, find the bizarre bits, and you think, good heavens, this is really extraordinary. And indeed it is, because it is bizarre, it really is not ordinary Orthodox. Because fundamentally, we are called to be ordinary. Our vocation is to save our souls. Yes? To be able to fulfill Christ's commands so that we may end up in heaven rather than the other place. That is our calling for all of us. Yes, okay? However, some people will be called to do other things. For instance, it is extremely useful in any parish, whether it be 15 turn up for a liturgy on Sunday or 500, to have a cadre of people who are able to explain why we have icons, why there is an icon screen, what is going on in this particular icon of the First Ecumenical Council, what is going on in this particular icon of the Nativity of the Mother God, and so on. It is really important, and of course that doesn't matter whether they're men or women. Indeed, probably women are better at this. So, that's one thing. We need to teach children, and we need to help parents parents and grandparents, because traditionally in Orthodox countries it was the grandparents who were really responsible for passing on the faith. But very often, and especially in countries where there has been communism, what has been passed on has actually been rather strange. Not altogether helpful. Certainly not altogether. So that's another problem. But the good thing is that there are a lot of people, young men particularly, between the age of 18 and 25, but there are a lot of other people as well, who are searching for God. And when they come to Orthodoxy, very often they will find what they are looking for. And if they find what they're looking for, then they have got to be able to grow within that community. It's not good enough for just a liturgy once a month and nothing much else happens. So, okay. Right, so that's an introduction. Start with an introduction. Now let's go on to what we are doing. So what we have done is to a one-year certificate course, which is available to anybody, whether they think they're going to do more or not. Then, if they've done that, then they have to, and want to go further, then there's a 2-year diploma. And we also have a number of people who just sit in and listen. We don't charge them quite as much money. Perhaps we should charge them more. Anyway, so we have both, and we also do a certain amount online. If we can possibly avoid doing it online, we should do so, because it's actually important for people to meet each other. It's important for the students to meet the lecturers. It's important for the lecturers to meet the students. And the dynamic in a class where people are asking questions and they're thinking it through together is enormously important and helpful. And that's what we've always tried to do. So, those two options. Of the people who do the diploma, a certain number will go forward and be ordained. And from this, which is why we're called a seminary, and from this group, I reckon, I was trying to tot it out on my way, I reckon that 11 current priests in our archdiocese have come through this system. Now there are things that we can't do. We cannot stand you at the Psalterion, so where the service is sung, and explain to you all about the services and make you do it. We can't do that. That you have to do in your parish. We are not really up to teaching you music. In fact, we're not up to it at all.
Not yet.
Not yet. No.
Not yet.
So one day, but there may be that we could run courses on that as well. At the moment, we're not up to being able to teach you New Testament Greek. It would be a very good idea if we could give you some insights into the New Testament Greek, and that I think Father Stephen will help us with, or Theo. Anyway, so it would be a good idea, because if you don't understand, if you look at the Greek and you can't, one, know what the letters are, and you can't work out which is the verb, and which is the subject, and which is the object, you are at a disadvantage, because there are plenty of words which we don't, are not the same. So for instance, we use Kyrie eleison, and we translate it as Lord have mercy, but it means much more than just Lord have mercy in English. English is juridical, mercy, judge, and all this sort of stuff. Whereas it actually means that God is helping us. It is about philanthropy and his gifts and so on. So, but we can teach you church history. We can teach you about canons. We can teach you to start you on the Bible, and so on. We can do those things, and that is what we do. Right. What have I left out? Malanga, explain to me what I've left out.
I don't think you've left anything out, Father.
What should I add?
Well, we are planning in the future, as we grow, to as you say, do more things.
Do more
like,
things,
like
yeah.
the music.
We are proposing to have a pilgrimage stroke summer school next.
Yes, we
June.
are. We have a camp.
So that will be
pilgrimage
where we can do a bit more
in the
stuff.
northeast.
When?
Yes, so we'll go
in
to
June
see.
next year.
We'll go and see.
18 plus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll go and see St Cuthbert,
That's
St
right.
Bede,
All those people.
and various other things. Yes. All
And
right.
we went to the British Museum.
And we went to the British Museum, and we probably should go to the British Museum again, because that was a very good.
Well, actually, the
The-
Bayeux tapestry is coming, so
Yeah,
that
it
might
is.
be a very good opportunity for a trip.
Yeah, yeah, so there are all sorts of things.
Yes.
Yes.
I have a question. Your Reverence has spoken about the church history. Can we see an extended program of this course regarding the church history?
Yes, so what happens is that we will produce a handbook, which Melangeth will produce, which will tell you the things that we're covering.
Okay.
We tend to stress either the Byzantine Empire and what happened in the Byzantine Empire, and we tend to stress what has gone on in Britain. Yeah. We do cover the Balkans. We do cover Russia up to a point. We could do a lot more than that. Particularly, in fact, I think we need to think about that really this coming year, because with the Ukraine war, there is a whole background there of really quite complicated historical reasons why it is as it is. And it is important for us as Orthodox to understand what those things are. Yeah?
Okay.
All right.
So we have to wait for that handbook.
You have to wait for be
If you
patient.
enroll, you
Yes.
get a
Patient.
handbook.
Yes, you get a handbook. If you enroll, you get a handbook. So be patient. Who knows what may happen next? Right. So, as far as so all of us who lecture are here. So there's
Apart from two, Father Philip and Father Panayotis.
who only does one.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. Father Philip is here. He is the priest. I think I received him in the year. Anyway, so a long time. So he is the priest in. Well, he's sort of something grand. He's supposed to sing the loss in the
He's
hand.
posting
Yes.
lots of
So,
things.
and that's right. So and he's in Lincoln. So he comes. Melangeth is the administrator, though if anybody would like help with the administration, we'd really like to hear from you. We have a library upstairs, so we meet here. Normally, we have this room and the room on the other side of the corridor because we're running two courses at once. Okay, we can get lunch here sometimes. Generally,
Yes.
because
Fasting
that's
isn't so good though, so we've done a room share.
yes, and we also have a small room which has got about 3,000 books in it, which we're in the process of sorting out. And you can borrow those as you need to, ultimately. In a bit. Right. Then added to that, we are also, Sister Theobulia is running an icon course, so that is an extra thing, but it's not happening here.
No, it's online.
It's online. Well, it's more than online. Sister Theobulia is going to teach people how to paint and how to hold their brushes and how to wash them.
Yes, this really came because I've been very reluctant to take up doing the physical side of it again because it is exceedingly hard work. But and also if you do very short courses, you find that you are very quickly into the position that everybody wants an icon in a week or 2 weeks, and you're finishing it off for them. You know, but they haven't actually learned how to do it. So the actual workshop course will be a serious one. So that we go slowly through the processes, and people will have to be patient with that.
After 70 years, you'll know how to do it.
4 years. So that by the time people actually paint the icon, they can use the brush strokes you need to paint the icon, which seems logical. By the time people actually use the colour, you can tone the colours to the degree that you need to tone them to paint the icon.
Right.
So the long term is to be much quicker to paint the icon when you actually
Okay,
go
we know how
to
to
the
do
board.
it. So
You
Sister
know how to do
Theobule
it.
is a nun of the monastery of Chrysopeae in Crete, though she actually lives in Shrewsbury. Okay? So she is an Orthodox nun. Father Stephen is from across the border, where they're not barbarians like the English. They're proper
They are
Romans.
barbarians.
And he will be ordained, he's a deacon at the moment, and he will be ordained a priest next Friday. So if you want to come, that will be in St Andrews.
Do we know what time that is?
Matins at 9:15 according to their calendar.
Or is it in the morning?
In the morning.
9:15 matins, and
Matins, yes.
yes,
Thereafter.
right. Malangeth does the administration and ethics and fits
Church
in.
history.
I do church history, some theology, canons, so on. Theo, over there, is the cleverest of us all, and he does theology and the fathers. So, and Father Philip, he tends to concentrate in the
He does pastoral most.
pastoral stuff, but he concentrates on the certificate really. Well, a bit.
He does a bit of both.
Bit of it. So
We all do
now the
both.
reason for this is that if you have one person so we could have Theo being laid on for doing 5 sessions on the Holy Trinity. And there have been those where you have had that kind of thing. Indeed, there have been those where there has been an entire weekend, starting on Friday night, going through to late on Sunday, about, for instance, the book of Deuteronomy. And we have felt right from the very beginning that this was not a good idea. What we needed was different voices, different subjects, spread it around. Some of you here have done it, so you better tell us whether you think that works or not. Philip, does it work?
Doesn't work.
You prefer to have a whole weekend on Deuteronomy?
No. I prefer the idea that we mix and match.
Right, okay. Okay, so there's different voices, different things, different topics, so it keeps everybody reasonably alert. There's a temptation after lunch to go to sleep, but we try and avoid that by putting on something more vigorous.
Leviticus is always after one.
Right, so that is the 5 of us who are here. Talk to us about anything you want to. And we're going to have a panel. Are we going to have a panel now?
We may as well, while we wait for the bishop, I think we'll reverse the day around, seeing as he's been called to do other things. So, grab a chair, people. We'll make ourselves available.
We're going to have a pen as well.
Availability chair.
You don't want to ask me anything.
These are the features of No, I'm okay.
No,
you
no,
can-
no, no,
No, you can't see one.
Theo, grab a chair.
Come along, Theo.
So if you have any theological questions or doctrinal questions, or if this is, this is like a seminar, if you could come here to learn rather than be spoken to. So, these are the people with all the knowledge.
I think it might be helpful actually if we, so you know who we are. Would you like to leap your feet one by one and say just where you're from and who you are? Name, where you're from?
Morning, I'm Sania and I'm from Seoul. Want to say anything else?
That's right.
Parish of Worcester?
Yeah, I was about to say that. Morning, my name is Ilya, and we're attending the parish of Worcester.
Morning, my name's Simon, and also with Malangeth in Worcester.
Morning, I'm Jan. I live in Milton Keynes. I go to church in Malta.
In Walsall.
My name's Lee. I live in Harden in Wales and go to St Barbara Church in Chester.
Morning, my name's Stephen. I live in Wrexham. I go to St Barbara's Parish.
Very good. Good. Well done.
Gabriel, Shrewsbury.
I'm John, I
That's
live
it.
near Oswald Street and I go to Shrewsbury Church.
Gregory, I'm from Northampton, St Anne's, and I've been here and did the certificate course and the diploma course.
Hi, my name's Natoya, and I go to the Antiochian Church of Doncaster, St Columba, Kensington.
I'm Peter from St Anne's, Northampton. We were there and I've just done the course here.
Morning, Philip, Northampton.
Good morning, my name is Florian, I live in Coventry and I'm very happy to be here.
Good morning, my name is Moses. I frequent two churches. One is St Aidan's Antiochian Church in Manchester, and then the one I was baptised at is St Nicholas under the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese of Great Britain.
In Manchester?
Yeah, Manchester. Father David Carnelli.
My name's Callum. I go to St Aidan's in Manchester, Antiochian Church.
Morning, I'm Pavlos. I'm from the Rugby parish.
Morning, I'm Hilary. I go to St Anne of Saints, Worcestershire.
Good morning. My name is Christopher and I worship at Bransford near Worcester and have prior to that lived in Bristol and attended there, and then I go back Cheltenham or Oxford, very important, but that's where I was received to the Orthodox Church.
Okay, good. So, are there any burning questions? Yes.
Hi, Father. Yeah, I was just wondering if you could maybe speak to the spiritual way behind the chants of monks compared to maybe just lay people, if any, at all. In terms of like the difference of like maybe spiritual presence through the chant compared to when just a lay person.
Through the chant?
Like a chant or a song or like a psalm being read, maybe Psalm 135 being
Or
chanted.
prayer rule or whatever. All right. So, there are two ways of approaching the spiritual life. Normal way for most people is in parish churches where they most of all of the mysteries take place, though one has to say probably ordinations don't take place very often in certain parishes. So, but otherwise everything happens, okay? There is an assumption that people may be married, there's an assumption that they may have children, and that the community will be set up to try and help married life, help children develop in the faith, and so on. So that would be the sort of normal route, right from the very beginning. So after Pentecost, we find those who were converted doing four things. They were keeping the teaching of the apostles, they were keeping the community, they were present at the breaking of the bread, and they were saying the prayers, right? The implication being that they were involved in saying the Psalms, and probably because the temple was still in existence at that time, they would go to the temple in order to pray, but it might be similar, all right? So that's how it started, right at the very beginning, and that is what every single parish will be doing. Now, some people will feel called to do something more, okay? And they will feel that they are called to keep a particular rule, and they will either, or normally, they will attach themselves to a monastery to see if being a monk or a nun suits them. Okay? So they will be normally celibate. Well, once they become a monk or nun, they will be celibate. But they may have been, for instance, married before and then wife died, husband died, and they then joined a monastery. That will depend on the monastery. In Orthodoxy, each monastery has its own particular way of doing things, its own typikon. Okay? The typikon, for instance, that you would find in Tolishant Knights is very different from the typikon you find on Mount Athos. Yep. So they run slightly differently according to the abbot or abbess. So Sister Theovulia is the person who's talking about that. In terms of services, the monastics will do far more. So they will have a rhythm of services during the day. Now, in my experience, that would be two different things. So there will be communities where the day starts off with a large chunk of prayer. There will then be a certain amount of work that takes place, and then there will be some more prayer in the evening, and then later on there will be prayers which they say in their cells alone. Okay? But there is a different way. So the monastery in Dokyaru and some of the monasteries now in Ukraine will run a system where it will depend on what jobs need doing. So they will fit, they run a farm, for instance, at Olshanka, they run a farm, so therefore there is farm work that has to be done. So we'll get up early, they will do some prayers, then they will do work, and then they will go back to say more prayers. If on the other hand it snows and they can do very little outside, they will do much more. So it will fit around the system that they're in. Okay? Now, there are priests who are operating in parishes who are celibate, and because once you're a priest you cannot marry. So there will be some who are celibate, and they will very often be monks, but not necessarily. So because somebody is called an archimandrite does not actually mean that he has taken any vows. He may have done, but it doesn't necessarily follow. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, yes, we have.
All right.
Perhaps Sister has something further to contribute to your question.
Add.
Yes.
In regard to the Typicon obviously has some very fundamental monastic basics, which are broadly Brazilian, which are carried all the way through to every monastery, and then Typicon will be regular. It will firstly be something written for the particular monastery, and it will be approved for use. Now, I believe our Typicon was approved by the Archbishop of Crete at that time, and also by, because it's Stavropigic, it would have to be approved by Patriarch Bartholomew.
Explain Stavropigic.
Basically, it means that instead of being under the diocese primarily, it is under the Patriarch primarily, so that we cooperate. In fact, we have a very good relationship with the diocese, and do a lot in the diocese, but the ultimate authority of any changes which happen lies with the Patriarchate. And the Typicon is quite broad. There's very little of it as compared to a Western rule. So it leaves a lot of interpretation for the presiding Geronda Geronda. And that does then change quite a bit with personality. So you have to get used to the idea that, like a different priest coming to a parish, there will be some changes which happen, which may or may not be difficult for you to deal with. You know, some will welcome it, some will not be so happy. But the fundamental thing will always remain the same. as well the relationship of the community, which must be basically a good one, because we're all progressing to the kingdom of heaven. And basically the community needs to be happy in their vocation, even if life is terrible at that particular moment. That was a bit about the rule. Yes, work. Very often in the community, even where you've got a very large, in fact, almost more so when you've got a very large amount of services that you do during the day, people will, from time to time, have to go and do something else. Where we are, obviously, Crete is very, very hot in summer, but gardening needs to be done. So we have gardening teams who go out straight in the morning and garden, and they come in at about the ninth ode to the Mother of God during Orthros, so that they will have done, the team for the week will have done their gardening by then. And also there'll be other duties which come in, and one or two people may be delegated to them. So except on a very big vigil near, I don't think I've ever seen the whole community in position at the same time.
Right. So one other thing I'd like to say is this. If you go on the internet, you will find internet pundits who will tell you that basically, as any lay man or woman, that really their life should be a sort of quasi-monastic life. This is an error. That's not it at all. There's a different way of doing things. There are different problems. And trying to impose, for instance, some kind of monastic rule in the family is a waste of time. Or a disaster.
Can actually be damaging.
It could be very damaging. Right. Any other questions?
Can we talk about that a bit more?
Yes.
What, family?
No, what you just touched on.
Right. So there will be those, and I think you find this on the internet, who will be saying, yes, well, of course, you should, you should be keeping the hours, and probably you should be doing orthros, and your fasting should, and you've got to do lots of Jesus prayer, your fasting should be as strict as you possibly can, and so on and so forth. Yeah. In a parish, in an ordinary Orthodox parish, that is unworkable. And all that happens is that the people who try and do it feel utterly frustrated and feel that they're a failure. You have to just make the ordinary life that you live it in order to try and develop your Christian understanding. So, you have to think about the people you are meeting at work. Are you going to impose the 9th hour on them in the afternoon? No, of course you're not. You're going to try and be kind, and you're going to try and be generous, and you're going to try and help them, even if they have no idea that you are an Orthodox Christian. Because we say before communion, I will not tell thy secret to thine enemies. We have to be reserved. There are people who need to be told, and there are people who definitely do not need to be told, at any rate at the moment. Yep. It is a fallacy to think everybody is suddenly going to become Christian all at once. That doesn't seem to be what God has in mind. So there's no point in trying to impose on him what we think we ought to do. Yes? So there is a definite difference. So for instance, if you're married, the way you live out your married life, you're with somebody who most of the time you get on with very well, but from time to time it is rather more challenging. That's great, but you've got to gather, you've got to develop how that is going to work out. So it's a different thing. We have in our parish somebody who has been both a monk and a married person, and he would tell you that being married is much more difficult. All right, is that happy? So I mean, it's then you need to actually in the community you're in, and with a priest who's may not be the parish priest who's your spiritual father, it might be somebody else. Whatever your spiritual father is, where you go to confession, you gradually work out how you're going to do it, and it takes time. We mustn't be in a hurry.
Is that the same to say you should have a spiritual father? Or
Yes.
Is your priest your spiritual father?
Your parish priest could be, and probably if he receives you, that's where you start off. But for instance, most of the people I've received would come to me as a spiritual father. But there will be people who say, can I go to someone else? And I would say, yes, of course you can. Yes, no problem at all. And you know, if you find somebody you get on with that person better, that's great. Go to that person. Yes. What you don't want to do is you find that you've got a spiritual father at Torsion Night, you've got a spiritual father on Mull, you've got a spiritual father at Chrysopeae, you've got a spiritual father somewhere else, and you go round to each spiritual father to get the answer that you want. That's not a good idea.
Is there any advice? I come from, say, a Protestant background.
Yeah.
Well, a loose Protestant background. My father's a high-ranking Freemason, so that sort of teaching morality that permeated the family.
You're not a Freemason?
No.
Okay. Yeah.
Any advice for someone in my position, coming from the West, say, as a convert to Orthodoxy? Because all this is new. When I visit Greece, and surely when I visit Ukraine next year with my soon-to-be wife, it's all different because they have Orthodox tradition built into society. Whether they just turn up on Christmas and Pascha, but it's all new to them. So is there any advice? Fundamentals I need to get right. I've been
lots. Right. So one of the things that we all need to understand about Orthodoxy is that there are countries where it is the popular religion. Yep. Now in Britain, we have not had a popular religion since the Reformation. So basically since 1530. So it has always been a matter of choice. Yep, that's a big difference. So if you're in Greece, everybody sort of trundles along to Pascha. Everybody trundles along to the Nativity of the Lord. It's a sort of normal thing to do. Yeah. Whether they go more often than that is a different matter. But they will. If you go to a Greek restaurant and you say, I want nistissima, which means fasting food, most of them will be able to say, oh yes, all right, well, yeah, I'll give it to you. Okay. So that's one major difference, because here it is a choice, and any of us who are converts have had to choose to become Orthodox. And having made that choice, it's a much more powerful thing. If you've always been brought up as Orthodox, you may know quite a lot about it. So I'll give you an example. This was some friends of ours. He was a Greek, and he married a Dutch Reformed girl. And she dyed-in-the-wool Calvinist. Yes. So she said, well, why do you do that? Why have you got this? Why are you doing that? Why do you? And so on. See, so he had to find out. Yeah. And some of the things he could answer, and some of the things he had to read. He had to go and talk to the priest. He had to go and talk to monks and so on. But the result was that he actually became a very devout Orthodox Christian. Yes. And she also became an Orthodox Christian, and also a very devout Orthodox Christian. So it all worked. But had he married another Greek, he probably never would have done. He wouldn't have been challenged. So we are challenged. And the old Archbishop Gregorius said to me, think that there is a big difference between you and me. You've had to think this out. Yep. So we have to think it out as converts. We have to think it out in a way that people who have been brought up all their life in Orthodoxy sadly don't bother.
I had a lady, apropos of you going to Ukraine, she's Romanian, and she was concerned about her daughter. There was another girl and all the rest, but she'd gone off to university. She said, we told her to go to church because you go to church, and we can tell you what you do when you get to church, but we don't understand why we do it. We do it because that's what we do. We grew up under communism, and our grandparents told us to do this. That's it. So you have to.
Like when I got with my girlfriend, now fiance, it was like, oh great, she's Ukrainian, she's Orthodox.
She knows it all.
No.
No.
I'm teaching her.
Yes,
Why I'm
good,
here.
good. All right, good. Excellent.
Actually, one finds this quite a lot, even with Greeks, you know, honestly, because I'm a catechist in our church, so I come across a lot of people who are either coming back to church, having been born into it initially, or those that are new to it, and there's a huge difference in attitude and one, but on the other hand, there's not a great difference in the lack of knowledge.
And we are in a mission situation. So the countries that have a different kind of mission. So if you're a Bulgarian, the mission in Bulgaria is different from what it is here. So in Bulgaria, you've got to cope with people who are communists and people who have not been taught the faith properly. Here we've got people who will think that they're atheists, who are a secularist society, and we have to deal with that, work that out, and that is a temptation. There's a temptation there. So, and the rules that one might keep in Greece are not necessarily going to be the rules which will work here. So one has to be sensible.
But for yourself, I think as a former Protestant, as a one-time Pentecostal myself, you have to lay it all down. Right? You have to be prepared, because the Orthodox Church has no need of a whole bunch of Anglicans or Pentecostals who like dressing up or like people getting dressed up, but actually in here and in here, they're completely unreformed in the true sense of the word. Right? You have to be willing to say, this is where I've come from, this is where I'm at, this is where I found the truth, this is what I want, this is the pearl of great price. So what is the story of the pearl of great price? When they sold everything they had to get the pearl, right? Pulled the house apart, swept it all clean to find the missing coin, right? Sold everything they had and bought the field to dig up to get the treasure out of the field, right? That is the model for converts into orthodoxy. It is the pearl of great price, and it is the repository of our salvation and the truth. And so everything else that's come before, whilst it can be a preparation, you have to be willing to weigh it up and to say, okay, this is where I'm going because this is what matters.
My trench is 30 feet deep.
You also find, though,
That's the trench I'm digging to find the pearl.
when you come from particular Western backgrounds, you need to have understanding of words, because what one person might mean by sacramental is not what Orthodox people might mean by sacramental. And that's what you actually have to go right back to the foundation and relearn even your vocabulary and your understanding of that vocabulary.
That's what I'm finding is English is not so, it's not the best language.
English has been denuded.
Yeah.
So we won't blame our brethren from across the pond, but it has been stripped out. So Father mentioned mercy earlier. I can't speak to Kyrie or Lazon, but I can speak to mercy. I mean, on a medieval battlefield, the call for mercy was a call for somebody to put you out of your misery. And they actually had a weapon that people would go around and they would dispense mercy to the dying soldiers. Right? Now, I'm not suggesting that has any applicability in Orthodoxy, but what I'm saying is the word and the meanings have become disconnected. Right? So mercy, I choose to show mercy to you in a particular context. If you read texts going back, even back to the 18th century, you'll find that the words have a much richer meaning than they have today. And the more we go into the digital age, the more stripped out the language becomes. So don't blame the poor English language.
Oh,
right?
It's easy on Welsh, sorry.
Well, Welsh, the thing that Welsh is, I can speak from my own experience, Welsh had such a small vocabulary when they translated the Bible that they the translators imported a whole pile of Latin and Cymraegised it, they Welshicized it, so that they could accommodate the meanings that they were reading.
Just like that.
I've been I've been like quite obsessively thinking about that particular point for a while now.
Which point was that?
What you were just saying.
Which one? About Welsh?
Words. No, not the Welsh stuff. I don't know anything about Welsh, sorry.
Oh, bless the Welsh.
And annoying a lot of people with it as well. So any I don't know, comments on how not to annoy people about it.
Oh.
So for example, if someone talks about what one word means in the Bible, or how orthodoxy talks about that word compared to, say, Reformed theology or something, or
like the term born
atheist.
again.
Yeah.
That's one example. I could bring up others, but I'll leave that. I'll leave you brought up an example. Yeah. I found that maybe it's much as my personality, but I'll end up sounding like correcting people.
Well, you see, you fit right in with my family. My wife and I'll sit there, we'll stop the conversation for 20 minutes. I kid you not. Find just the right word to express the concept that one or other of us is trying to tell the other one, right? So
Yeah.
some of us are very wordy like that. But what I would say to you is that when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, the days of Herod the king, right? There came wise men from the east, right? They followed the star. They were looking for the king of the Jews, right? Whereas he was born king of the Jews. And when they get to Bethlehem, he's in the house. Jesus is in the house with his mother. They bring gifts. And what do the scriptures teach us? It teaches us that Mary stored these things up in her heart, right? And Pache, peace, along with what Father was saying earlier, right? It's not for everybody. Gregory Nazianzus says this. It's not street talk, all right? It's not for the marketplace. It's not boutique, sitting outside a cafe with a loud voice filling the air with the sound, with your own sound. Right? These are.
I'm not sure I agree with that.
These are. Well, you don't agree with Gregory Nazianzus?
No. Sorry, I'm just being honest.
That's okay. That's okay. Honesty is better.
Yeah.
Right? But it's about these things are to be treasured. And what I would say to you is, if you want my personal view, let it be. Keep it in your heart. The time will come. Right? And if somebody doesn't agree with you, or somebody has, it's like this or that or the next thing, well, then offer a prayer for them, rather than contradict them.
Yeah.
Pick your time, pick your audience.
That's true.
And remember, St. John's Gospel, none shall come to me unless my Father call. So you have to wait for his call, or they have to.
St. Cyril of Jerusalem also begins his catechetical lectures with the preface that essentially you can't cast pearls amongst the swine. And essentially what he's saying is, of course, what we are teaching is true, but truth can be damaging if people aren't ready to receive it. And so the question becomes, who can we be in the world to create the climate in which people can then receive the truth?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Yes.
So then it's less sort of in the realm of dialogue and argumentation, because that sort of stays at the surface level. It becomes a question of ontology. And this is where I think orthodoxy shines, in that, okay, and obviously this is sort of semi-ironic, I'm sort of sat at the front here talking to you, but in the sense of actually maybe we should become saints first, and then we might have the authority to speak, kind of thing. And we're all on that journey, so we're all trying our best. And yeah, we just hope that in that progression, we can pull people in towards the goal that we're aiming for as well.
Humility first.
Yeah.
That's what struck
Because
me.
you will never fatten a pig with pearls. Am I wrong?
I think Christopher has a
Can I ask if the Orthodox Church uses the word nous anymore? What used to be pronounced as nous in England, and teachers would like to say to their pupils, use your nous, meaning what? Is it in use still? The word nous.
It certainly is in use, and it is used every single liturgy, because the litany before the Lord's Prayer, can I remember it off the top of my head? Anyway, it's the idea is that it is a faculty of the soul, and we're joining in that liturgy between the liturgy of heaven and the liturgy of earth, and the faculty that is doing this is the nous, and it is a faculty that we have whereby we are in contact with God. So it's a faculty like being able to hear or see or smell or taste or touch. It's like that, but it is of the soul, and the nous is the faculty through which we are able to communicate with God and He with us. And it comes in every liturgy.
Is the actual word used in the liturgy?
Yep.
News. Oh, right.
It often gets translated as intellect as well.
That I think
Yes.
I have lost that.
Yeah.
The word in the liturgy that you.
The intellect is not a good word for it, because it is something. Intellect is your brain.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, our brain is part of is physical. Yeah. The things that we think are physical. You can have somebody who appears to be a great intellect, and then they get dementia. Yeah. And they're half-witted. You know, they can no longer maintain the full faculty of their intellect. It's gone, but the nous remains. Now, I'll give you an example of this. This was somebody I had to go, who was, I think, Ukrainian. I had to go and visit in a hospice. And, oh well, he didn't go to church very often, but he did go sometimes. And well, you can say some prayers, but he won't know what you're doing because he hasn't spoken to any of us for 3 days. So I go in and I say to him, I'm Father Stephen. You are not at all well. You are looking forward to heaven. And I'm going to say some prayers. So I started the prayers, and when I got to the Our Father, his hand came up and he made the sign of the cross. He had understood every single word that I said, not with his intellect, but with his nous.
And it's important to know as well, when it is translated as intellect, that is then distinct from rational faculty.
Yeah.
So for some, there's some real distinction in it. And I think the reason is the image that St. Maximus gives, and he's borrowing from Plato here, is that the nous is like the charioteer, and the other faculties of the soul are the horses. And oftentimes in life, the horses are sort of pulling in different directions, and our sensible faculties are the things that govern us, right? This is the passions, they act on us. And so the spiritual life is the charioteer taking hold of the reins and actually guiding and directing them properly. And it's when reason and sensible sort of capabilities are put together in harmony and united towards God, that the intellect can then take us up. So it's reason can be involved in it, but like Father said, it then surpasses it, and it's in the eye of the heart that we are then actually encountering God.
So it's eye of the heart, another way to say the organ.
The heart, the nous, the intellect in that sense, but yeah, intellect probably not the best.
Did you say reason is part of the nous more, or not part of the intellect more?
Part of the soul.
Right.
So normally the way that the fathers would dissect the soul, and I say this loosely because they're doing it in a pedagogical way. So they're dissecting it to help us understand how different faculties that we have then relate to our capacity of the soul. So they split it up into three. There's like the sensible part, there's the rational part, and then you have the nous. So the nous is sort of the governing body, and then you have other parts that are in control of, say, emotions, anger, or even, and then you have sort of base parts of the soul, which include sort of tiredness, hunger, all that kind of stuff. And the goal of the spiritual life isn't to discard any of that, but to bring it into union. And once that happens, the fog sort of dissipates from the nous, and that's when you can see clearly. That's when you have sort of spiritual vision, let's say. And oftentimes, that fog begins to dissipate when people are on their deathbed or they have a spiritual experience, which is oftentimes why people might start to see things, because the eye becomes clear as their soul is about to go towards God.
Thank you. If I can segue into something completely, almost seemingly unrelated, just briefly, and that is the importance of liturgy. Because we are hugely liturgical when I'm talking to people who are converts here. Liturgy is the bearer of doctrine. It carries doctrine, right? As surely as a train carries coal or passengers, liturgy carries doctrine. Lex orandi, lex credendi. The law of prayer becomes the law.
As we worship, so we believe.
Exactly. It is. It's a much better translation than the way they normally translate it. And it's very important because you will see it in time. And if you look at other Christian expressions, their demise in the West has accelerated as they have abandoned a uniformity of liturgy. So the Anglicans, for example, I'm not beating up on them, but they're a good example where I've come from, right? They abandoned the Book of Common Prayer that they'd had for 300 or 400 years in favour of some sort of alternative, which became another alternative and another alternative. And before you look around, they're in a crisis from which they're in a flat spin from which there's no coming out. Okay? But the liturgy allows ordinary people to carry doctrine. It allows them to participate in a way that they wouldn't be able to participate otherwise. So when somebody says to you, oh, well, what about all this liturgy? Well, first of all, whoever's saying that will have some sort of liturgy or core copy. But that's what it's about. You are able to participate because you know what's coming. And once you get a facility with it, then it will really start to speak to you. And that's one of the things that, because I do teach a lot of scripture here, is one of the things that is very important to me is that you go away from here when I finish with you, and you have a capacity, you hear the liturgy, and you recognize the scripture in it. You'll carry a biblical universe. Anyway, sorry. So I can start.
Sure. Sort of follow up to my first question. So I was listening to a Catholic theologist talk recently about the authority through prayer and song given to monks or ordained people, priests, bishops. And I was wondering, in terms of similarity to Orthodoxy, similarly with the icons. So when an icon is painted, it's painted by an Orthodox Christian, which is part of what makes the icon holy. It's not just a picture, of course, it follows specific brushes, colours, but at least from my understanding, ultimately it is the Orthodox Christian, the artist, who is given worship through the icon that sort of makes the icon holy. So likewise, the question that I'm trying to figure out is, if that's the case for icons, then for music, as Orthodox Christians, we listen to Orthodox music, I particularly like Greek and Arabic, Orthodox chants, whatever. Is there any importance of that chant being sung by, say, a monk? And what would the difference be, for example, from a song being chanted by, say, a choir of monks versus just a music artist. Is there any relevance in that? Because obviously in Catholicism, the theologists were saying there is. They're saying that, you know, that there is authority behind the chant of a monk. You know, even if it's recorded, do we have that in Orthodoxy? Is what I'm trying to figure out.
Can I just make
Speak.
on this? Because in iconography, in my experience of teaching, I've had classes where you've had Orthodox, where you've had other Christians, and where at one point I actually had a non-Christian. And it does make a difference to their ability to produce an icon. They do different things according to their religious tradition, or according to non-religious tradition. And you can't get it across because it is something to do with the spiritual experience. You know, so you cannot, a person who is not part of the Orthodox community does not convey the full spiritual experience of the icon. So I would think that you would have that.
All right, so getting back to music, there are different kinds of Orthodox music, according to some degree to do with the nationality and what has happened in the history of that particular church. Now, if you take Byzantine chant, true Byzantine chant, there are certain things that happen in it. So once you have learnt the chant, you will know, for instance, this particular troparia that is being sung for a martyr. Yeah? Because they're always sung to the same tone, different words, but the same basic idea. Yeah? And there are a lot of chants which, because of the way the chant is written, it will convey rather more than just simply the words. The chant is actually telling you something about who this is once you've learnt. All right. So, for instance, in a funeral service, they go through all the tones. The reason for going through all the tones is because you are reminding the person who is dead of all the tones that they've listened to in their life. Okay? Now, they may have, of course, been tone deaf and never understood the tones, but so that would be the basis of Byzantine chant. However, it is not very easy to do for Western ears because it is not based on a musician, but Sandy over here can explain that exactly. So you cannot actually play all the tones on the piano. You could on a violin, but you can't on a piano. All right. Now, when we look at other countries, so in Bulgaria, there is a move, and indeed I have heard a Bulgarian choir sing Byzantine chant, and actually they knocked many Greek choirs into a cocked hat because it was really beautiful. Yep. So it's different. If you go to Georgia, there are two distinct traditions of Georgian chant, which I don't know much about, but they are difficult to do. You'll find with different things with Romanians, so on. The Russians, in the 18th and 19th century, in the 18th century, they took on a lot of Western ideas because of Peter the Great, and their music became westernized. So it is much easier for Westerners to learn Russian chant, much easier. You can play it on a piano. However, it is not very good at expressing the words. And I would argue that the words are really important. Of course, there are people who will go to Russian churches where everything is in Slavonic and they actually don't understand a word, not a word of what is being said. And it is also true that there will be Greeks who go to, for instance, Orthros matins for the Dormition, and they won't understand it because it is in Old Greek. Yeah. There's even a priest not a million miles away from me who said, well, when we saw it translated into English, we understood what it meant. This is a problem. So is there something that the monks have got that the lay people have not got? Probably not, actually. And some of the monasteries on Mount Athos are noted for the tonelessness of the singing. Dirty vestments, dirty rasa, incomprehensible, toneless music, but they love it.
I think there is a point here though, as many of us are in mission parishes, and there are lay people reading things like Vespers or Orthros,
Yeah.
they don't have any less validity.
No, of course they don't.
Because the lay people are leading it. The theology is there, the liturgy is there, the music is there, so and it's prayer. So
may I add to that?
It's equally valid. That's what that was part of the question, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Is it more valid if the monk sings it all right?
Yes, it's all more like spiritual.
To answer that in relation to the iconography point, I would be hesitant in what I'm locating the holiness of an icon in. So if we are saying it's the person painting it, I'm not sure traditionally if that was the case. What made an icon was that it was an icon, i.e. it represented a holy figure. And when the iconoclast controversy kicked off, one of the accusations that those that were against icons had was that some had even taken to the custom of, if there was a wonder-working icon, they would chip pieces of paint off, put it into water and drink it as if it was going to be some kind of holy medicine. But the point is, in the theology that we read in St. Theodore the Studite, St. John of Damascus, the holiness doesn't reside in the matter per se, but that in the matter is providing a vehicle to access the person on the other side. And so the grace comes in the encounter with the individual, not in the physicality as the end point, if that makes sense. So what makes it holy is that it depicts someone that's holy.
Yeah, there's another thing which we're talking in terms of the icons, that the validity of the icon depends on three things. It depends upon the icon being properly correct, theologically, etc. It depends on the blessing of the church, and it depends on the prayer of the people. So that no icon is complete without all of those.
To take you back to music, there's a story which I heard many years ago that I've never been able to locate the source. It's about St. Anthony of Egypt. And he had God gave him a dream about a cobbler in Alexandria. And this cobbler was married, so he wasn't a monastic. And he was a cobbler, and he fasted and he prayed, and he went to work and he gave some money to the poor. In other words, to quote Father here, he was very ordinary, right? Very ordinary. The angel in the vision said to him, when he prays, this cobbler, he prays with the angels, which is considered to be as good as it gets. If your worship is worship of the angels, you'll hear it in the prayers of the saints, that they prayed with the angels. And I think, whilst I can't verify the source, because I spent years trying to find it and asking everybody I know, nobody found it. I think, as an apocryphal story, it lends credence to what we're saying, which is, and what Malangas was saying, which was, you don't look at something and sort of break it up. As Gandalf said, he who has to dissect a thing to understand it has long since left the path of truth. Okay? So it's about, we won't know. When, if I put on 4 recordings or stood you behind a screen and had people play, right? Could you tell a monk chanting from a lay cantor? No. But one of them may touch you, and one of them will touch your heart, and one might not. So we have to be very careful. We're not dealing with magic here. Yeah, we're dealing with worship of God.
Could I just bring things back a little bit to this particular course? Because it is so important that there are different persons with different perspectives and different ways of teaching, some of which would be more theological, some of which would be more social and so on. And there are different aspects of the course which do that. So what we're aiming to do is form the whole Orthodox person, not just one bit of it. You know, and that kind of makes it very different from what Father was talking about, what Lampeter wanted us to do, and no, that doesn't work. The other thing I would like to say is that we spoke a bit about the question of people knowing something about their orthodoxy. One of the big things in the Catholic Church, which led to a lot of people leaving, and this was second generation people or third generation people from families, is that the kids, the parents can't answer the questions. They know what they believe, but they don't know anything about what constitutes that belief. And this, I know, led to quite a lot of people leaving the church, the Catholic Church. I don't want the same thing to happen in Orthodoxy. You know, it's so important that parents are able to talk in a reasonable way. And also in regard to this question of lay communities trying to act like religious communities, if they are, I'm not talking of lay communities which are proto-religious communities. I'm talking of lay communities which are trying to live a family life in and act as if they are, take on a lot of monastic structures. I have seen that in several communities after the 1960s, 50s, 60s changes. And it has broken down when the family begins, because that's at the time when the whole idea of the structure which has been built up very idealistically and in very good faith does not actually work once you've got children getting you up any time of night or day, you know, and other questions coming in. And this can actually end up repelling the young people. So there's a question here of how is your faith working so that it's not going to repel the next generation.
It's a case of do what you can, not what you can't. But always do as much as you can, reasonably.
There was a question there.
Hello, just to give a very brief example from our parish, and then just to ask a general question on the back of that, just bring it back to the music. So we are a very smaller community, very diverse, mostly Eastern European in the sense of Belarusian, Bulgarian, Russian, and so forth. Most of our music is Dominicon styles, in other words, playing chant, playing song kind of style. And I've noticed at times that one of the benefits of that is that, okay, most of our parishioners won't know the tones in terms of how we sing the tones, but they will know the rest in the Divine Liturgy more than Vespers. They will know a lot of the hymns that we do in Divine Liturgy. So if I'm the only person at the reader's stand, but no other choir, but nobody else, what I always find is that I will sing, but the other church will also join in, and it's wonderful, it's lovely. So I guess to ask the question, given that, for example, some of the, like for instance, the Sunday where we sing the Transfiguration antiphons, I understand that many of the choirs of old were antiphonal, so it was one choir singing to the other, responsorial kind of singing. I just wonder what Peter the Great was trying to do. If we take the concept of liturgy as being common work, was he trying to get everybody involved, everybody singing, rather than just having just select choirs? I don't know, it's just a question.
And we go back to the historical thing. There seems to have been responses which the whole congregation joined in with. But the complicated theology they couldn't learn it. It couldn't be taught to the whole community. So therefore, the community would join in with the responses. Now, at the start of the liturgy, in the Greek practice, you will have the choir sing a verse, and then everybody joins in through the prayers of the Mother of God or something. So everybody can join in with that, and they will join in with other bits. But there was, I think, probably never a case where the whole congregation joined in. You know, stand up, it's hymn number 527. And they would all sing hymn number 527. It was never like that. So it has always been. And the other thing is, remember that what you can do in a church which is very large, but hasn't been laid out terribly carefully, means that in order for people to hear, you have to develop a particular way of doing things. One of the things that happened in some churches, I think probably in Hagia Sophia, was that you'd have a deacon who'd start off right at the front, and then there would be a deacon halfway down, and even maybe a deacon right beyond that, at the back. One would start off in peace, let us pray to the Lord, and then the next was, and so everybody could hear it. Yeah. It sounds chaotic.
I don't know your situation.
It's a sort of rolling echo, yes.
I don't know your situation, I don't know if it's local to you, but I know of two parishes, not local to me either, but when they started, they were looked after by Oxford, which is the parish in Luton, and so the priest in Oxford looks after the Luton parish, but they sent some of their choir, so their choir was divided for a while, where they taught the Luton parish how to sing stuff in the tones, and now they sing exactly the same way. So in some of their pilgrimages and some events you go to, the choir may be half Oxford, half Luton, and you wouldn't know. I know because I know the people, but other people would just see a choir. And I know of another parish there, when they were trying to learn the tones, they all learned together, and I think it's a really awesome thing to do personally. And they said, right, this month we're singing everything in tone 1, so we've got it. Next month, or if we need another month, we'll do another month for tone 1. Then they went through tone 2. I can sing, when Peter starts stuff, I can join with Peter, we're in the same parish. But if Peter says sing that in tone 2 or 3, I'll be like, that's not happening. I could not do that. I can work on that, but at the moment, that's beyond me at the moment.
We have another question.
Oh, I wanted to say something in response to what Sister P really was talking about, the communities, families.
Yes.
Are you talking about people that try to create their own isolated communities? Is that what you were referring to?
Yes, to some degree, but no, in the sense of community, a few meeting and having the services together, you know, that has to be carefully thought out.
Okay.
I do know, though, of some families that try to live this very strict life with their children as well, and
Yes.
it's very, very damaging. It cannot and should not be done. It has to be, everything you do has to be age appropriate, you know.
Yeah, because I home educate my children,
Yeah, I know.
and I also am the lead on a classical co-op where I started it, and we're the only Orthodox family. Everyone else is a Protestant, right? And so we sort of been playing around with this whole balance between we're sort of out of the system, as it were, but we're also very much engaged with the system now. Things that I'm doing, I could talk about that another time, but like we're using this organisation in America called Scholay Communities, and the guy that runs that is Orthodox, but then he has an ecumenical approach with other Christians, so Roman Catholic, Anglican, Presbyterian, like strands of content and stuff. Anyway, I guess I'm bringing this up because me and my husband went to visit the church of Stoke after this festival we were at recently, and then we got into a discussion about whether we're allowed to pray with the Protestants. And me and my husband were just, I have to say, just rolling our eyes a little bit after a while, because we were just like, I don't understand why you're telling us that we can't sit with our Protestant friends. They're praying, we're praying. I'm not saying that doing that with them means that I agree with them theologically. They know that, we know that, everyone knows what's going on. I'm just giving you an example of like how this is playing out for us, and like a lot of stuff that I'm finding with other new converts, because I've got another friend joining this, and another one who's being baptized here, who are also both former Protestants, and they're sort of really coming into this going, oh, I can't do this anymore, and I can't hang out with Protestants, and I can't do that, and we started off that way a little bit as well, but anyway, I don't know what I would want from you guys to speak about that. I just thought I'd bring it into the conversation because of what you were talking about and how you're engaging in with bringing up children in Orthodoxy in this country, in this context, right?
I think something I actually learned from the monastery.
Yeah.
Because it appears very structured on the surface, but then you find in fact there are other people going off doing other things, and maybe you're called out yourself out of the service and so on to do something that needs doing in a hurry, or because there's a particular thing happening on the day. And you kind of have to think, well, I'm still praying even if I'm not in church. It's not so much about whether I'm actually at a specific service at a specific time. It's about living a life of prayer. So each thing which interrupts is kind of a challenge to live a life of prayer in a new way. You know, and I think that's the exciting thing. I think that's a great excitement, to be honest, lay people have, which you don't get, you know, with children and so on, because you are living life of prayer in an amazing way.
I think this is something that all Orthodox parents who are thinking of having children or have children, that this is an issue we face. I mean, I had to send my son to multiple schools and eventually ended up homeschooling right at the tail end because, you know, eventually it wasn't working. But I mean, we went from a small village school where it was very straightforward, it was Church of England, very basic, and I did a lot of Orthodox teaching at home. Age appropriate. When he got to middle school, secondary school, I sent him to a Roman Catholic school because that was the next best thing available. But there were various issues with the children that were there, really, rather than the education he was receiving or any indoctrination that might have been going on from, you know, there wasn't. It was fine for an education, but there was bullying issues and things like that. So I took him out and homeschooled him for the rest, and he's now going off to college to complete that in the secular thing. But he is firmly based, because of what I did at home, in his Orthodox faith. So I think, you know, this is something all of us have to consider. But what you don't want to be doing is you know, enforcing rules upon your children that are going to turn them off faith. That's the most important thing. But I think you also have a question about ecumenism in the broadest sense here, which perhaps others can answer.
Sorry, I didn't mean to bring that word up.
I hoped you were going to slip that one out.
Really discuss on that one that you said. Because one of the things about, for instance, the Orthodox liturgy and the Orthodox services is there's such a huge amount that if you did the whole lot, you would never ever get out of church, and you would need a few more hours in the day. But it's a resource, you know, and, you know, the parishes, they pick parts of this resource which work within the situation. So I think there's that as well, you know. We've got a vast resource of Orthodox teaching, Orthodox understanding, Orthodox life. And I think, you know, you have to pick what works for your family or your life or your community. You know, what you can do, not try and do more than you can, but take the challenge of, yeah, now that really speaks to my situation at the moment, and work with it. So, please.
Yes.
Well,
Fathers.
Father, may I say something quickly? Not to give a quasi-pastoral answer here, but more of a theological one. I think sometimes it can be easy to fall into a kind of dialectic mindset of us versus everything else, because that's how it can feel. And time again, reading the Fathers, you come across the image of actually all of this Hellenic education, all of the Greeks, the Romans, etc. Let's utilize it. And so you have this beautiful image in Origen of plundering the Egyptians, so you can see good things in everything else in the world, and it's not about throwing that away, but actually, okay, how can I appropriate this and find Christ in it? And that's how you start to transform everything else, not by pushing it away, but by embracing it into the fold of the church. And there's a really beautiful 3rd century epistle, the letter to Diogenetus, and it talks about how essentially humankind is the body, but Christians are the soul. And so even at this point in time when Christians were being persecuted by the Romans, every time persecution was lifted, they integrated into the society. They took formal positions in the Roman Empire. And they prayed continuously for the emperor, for the government. And so actually, what I'm trying to get at is that Christians have always sought unity, and although there's been teething problems in how that looks, it's always been an underlying desire. And so rather than trying to kind of run away from things, it's sort of trying to inculcate and appropriate it, but in a Christian manner.
If I can add some biblical stuff into this. How many of you know what my brother was talking about? He said, plunder the Egyptians. Boom, there it is. Okay, well, I'm not going to tell you. You'll have to join the class and tell you. A metaphor I use with people is the church is like a crown. Okay? And a crown has settings in it. If you look at the crown of state, and it has jewels in it. And for the purposes of this metaphor, and all metaphors are naturally false, and all metaphors break down, but we are where we are. The central jewel in the crown is the scriptures. Right? If you rip that out of the crown and say, well, it's no longer going to sit there, it's going to sit underneath and hold the crown up, it's not going to work. This is not what it's for. Similarly, a lot of you Protestants or former Protestants, we all have had in the past preoccupations. Full immersion baptism, holiness, charismatic, the work of the Holy Spirit. Right? The list goes on and on and on and on, except perhaps double predestination, which doesn't seem to have a place anywhere. All of those preoccupations can be found in Orthodoxy. Orthodoxy is by far the most charismatic expression of Christianity I have ever come across in my life. There are more miracles per capita, I swear, in Orthodoxy than in any other expression of Christianity. Right? Holiness, the list goes on. But they are like jewels, but they are set in their place in the crown, which is the church. They're not torn out and made to stand alone as something that is and blown out of all proportion. They are like, the church is like a body which has parts, and each part is in symmetry with all the other parts. Okay? Now, as far as being ecumenical is concerned, right? Man goes down from Jericho to Jerusalem and falls amongst robbers, right? And gets a clobbering, and gets robbed, and gets left naked and beaten and dying, right? We are not Pharisees. We are not Sadducees. Right? We are to be the Samaritan. And he didn't sit there and lay it on him and say, look now, listen here, pal. Right? Now, before I do this for you, we've got to straighten out a few things, especially about, the mountain of Jacob's well. He just did it. Right? He loved it. Right? Jesus meets the Syrophoenician woman. Lord, my daughter's got a demon, save her. What does Jesus say? He said, it is not meet to take the children's bread and throw it to the dogs. And she says to him, yes, Lord, but even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from the table. And for that answer, for that faith, the demon leaves the room. Right? Roman centurion comes, my servant is sick and on the point of death. And Jesus said, I will come. He said, no, Lord, you don't have to come. For I too am a man under authority, and with soldiers under me, I say to this one, go, and he goes, and that one, come, and he comes, and this one, do this, and he does it. You say the word, and it's enough for me. Now, in a non-ecumenical, strictly Pharisaic version of orthodoxy, none of those people would have received a blessing from God, right? Because they're not on the page. Right? We're here to be a blessing, as my brother was saying. We're the soul, to be the soul of the body. Okay?
So,
Brother.
where are the lines drawn then from like personal experiences? Where can we not enforce boundaries? Enforce isn't the right word, but where can we acknowledge boundaries in those sort of personal situations amongst people that are not where we are yet?
My turn.
Go ahead.
Right, so we are the church. Those who are outside the church, strictly speaking, are heretics, but they don't want to be heretics, or they shouldn't want to. They want to do the right thing, and therefore we should help them in whatever way we can. St. Cyril of Jerusalem talks about this by saying it is like reading the scriptures into a cave, and back will come an echo, right? The echo is correct, but there's a lot that's lost en route of coming out, yes? So some of the things that they're talking about are correct and right, and they're stressing the right things, but sometimes there are things that are not right, and they have got wrong. They have become mangled in the process. So right, that's where we start from. So we're saying, okay, what can we do with these people? Can we do a lot of things? Yes, you can do quite a lot of things. You can do a lot of practical Christianity can be done. When it comes to doctrine, and they're trying to tell you that you should believe in penal substitution, and penal substitution has for many Protestants become a doctrine which you have to believe. Well, no, they're wrong. They're just simply wrong. That is not the Orthodox faith. It was an invention of Anselm in the 10th century. Or was it 11th century? 11th century. So before that, nobody thought of it. They didn't do that. So it's a very, very strange, actually, that they have taken that particular way, because I suppose it's easy. But it's a mangled understanding of the Holy Trinity, apart from anything else. Therefore, if you are in a group with people, how much can you do with them and how much you can't do with them? I think that's quite difficult. Now, I have to represent the Archbishop on the General Synod of the Church of England. I never sing the hymns. As a matter of fact, I never sing Protestant hymns, ever. Because you find yourself singing a heresy.
You do, speaking from experience.
There's a story that Metropolitan Callistos told. You'll probably all have heard of him. So he went to a sort of interdenominational, interfaith thing, and there was a Hindu who was getting them to sing these words, and there were two people who flatly refused to sing: a Zen Buddhist and the Orthodox. And when they said, well, what does it mean? It was a hymn in praise of the green monkey god. Right? So we have to be careful not to find ourselves actually singing or praying heretical things, because it just holds us back. It isn't helpful. It isn't taking us forward in our faith. And I would tend to say to people, yes, there's plenty of Orthodox stuff to read. You do not have to read Protestant books. You do not even have to read Roman Catholic books. Read Orthodox books, because they will help you develop your Orthodox faith. But we must be kind, we must be generous. And any of us who here have once been Protestants will know that the Holy Spirit, sooner or later, will grab one of these Protestants in the bum. And once that happens, they will convert, as night follows day.
Might take a while.
It might take a while. It took me 14 years.
How was your balances? Yeah. Sorry.
I was just going to say, my husband works in the Christian music industry, so it's very much on the nose for us with that. And we were talking about this and saying that when he goes to a concert, or if it's a hymn that's been made into a song, or if it's just a hymn, sung like a hymn, that it's a Christian music concert rather than an Orthodox church, right?
Yep.
So like we were talking about how we can think about it and engaging it, and we treat it as though it's like a pop song.
Yep.
So even though it may be talking about God or referencing a psalm or whatever, and I'm just wondering if there's still any danger in that. Because that's how we're approaching it now.
I don't think there's a danger if you're treating it as a pop song. Now there's
that's
an
literally we
interesting.
say, oh, that's not church, that's a music concert where they are Protestants.
Now
That's
there's
how
an
we-
interesting book called, I think it's called Orthodoxy and Heresy by Father Stephen Danick.
Oh yeah, okay.
Now Father Stephen,
Heterodoxy.
Orthodoxy and Heterodoxy.
Oh, we've read that one.
Right. Father Stephen Danick was in fact a producer of pop music.
Yeah, my husband listens to him all the time and has read that
All
one.
right, okay.
So, yeah.
So right, okay. So what he found was that the actual pop music was better than the gospel music.
Yes, yeah. And
he thought,
we've had that conversation.
right, well there's a problem here. So I beware. Beware.
Right, one more question and then we're going to break for lunch.
Can I shoot my mouth off one more time? I'll be silent ever closer.
You won't. You won't.
No,
You won't.
probably not. No. You'll not hear Harold evermore. I have a very dear friend in Minneapolis, in Minnesota, and he's a Baptist. He's a Baptist minister, has been for decades. He was a professor in a Calvinistic Baptist college. I've been over there. He's asked me to talk to his students, one thing, and do all that sort of stuff. And then the last time we went, he wanted me to go to church with him, one of these big auditorium churches, a guy in scruffy jeans and a t-shirt. Right, we're gonna do the communion thing now, guys. Okay, so we've got the wafers and stuff, we're gonna say a prayer, then you guys come up and take your stuff and go back to your thing and do it together. And that was sum total of it, really. And my wife and I didn't move. Now, I could argue from Paul and say, it's not what they're saying it is, so it's just bread and cordial, so it doesn't matter. Right? But I don't think that would be a right argument. So we drew a line, and I just stood there. I didn't move. Now he was very upset, and he was upset with us, I suppose, but he was just upset because all of a sudden the rubber hits the road. The guy he loves, who was his friend for decades, won't take communion with him, or he was, well, of course he would. The following Sunday, I said, well, you're going to come to church with us. So we went to St. Herman's, Orthodox Church. And in St. Herman's, because it's OCA, or maybe it's just their tradition, They give warm wine as well as the prosper at the end. So I spoke to the guy and I said, can I have some extra for hospitality? He said, no, and so I was able to give him bread and wine. Now, I said to him, now, this is not what you're going to think it is, but this is hospitality. Oh, I know what it is, he said, because he's a Protestant, right? That's what it is. But what strikes me in the context of your question is, we have so much to give, right? The well is always bubbling up and overflowing. So we don't really have to, we can decide for ourselves what preserves our own soul, right? Because everything we have for them is toward their salvation. Does that help?
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Lunch!
Yes.
Yes.
Very, very nice.
Yes, right. Do you all know where the loons are? So, out of this door, out of the next door, across the corridor.
Where's the lunch?
We've got to get it all out.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Where was lunch being? Oh, here.
Yeah, I'm not really sure how to break that mold because you run then run the risk of one of those liberal.
Let's sit down.
Yes.
Hello. So it's lovely. This is your last meeting for the summer?
No, this is a meeting for people who are interested in
Assembly. That's lovely. I'm Bishop Maximos. Some of you might know me from for the area for the Midlands. I travel around in our communities. So I think I know most of you. So you've been working together you start the classes in June?
We start the classes in July, so we do October to July, and then we
Do summer school for the other 2 months.
Malanga just keep. So she
So did you present to the new candidates, to the people who are interested about the program of the seminary?
We've done something about the program. There's information about that. We've talked about the ethos, what we're trying to do. I've said that it is for ministry for anybody in the church, and some of them, I reckon it's 11.
Sure, that's helpful. I don't have much time, but I have 30 minutes to speak with you because I need to go to Coventry. We have a meeting with representatives from all the Orthodox communities from the Midlands and the broader area. I don't need to make you an introduction about the Orthodox Church. I suppose you already know. How many of you have you been attending classes last year? So we have many new people. Father Stephen, he's working very closely with the Archdiocese and the Archbishop of the Archdiocese. They're very grateful for his ministry. What he is doing, it's not easy, of course. He needs to spend time for the preparation for the classes and personal time to be here with all of you who have the great opportunity to join him. I know he's very inspiring. He's a very inspiring priest and person, and he's doing his best. No, he's doing a great job. I know that personally. You know, in the Orthodox Church, we never stop learning. As we grow, we need to learn more, and it never stops. You all know this kind of wisdom, and whoever believes he is wise enough, he has already deceived himself. And of course, not only from the Christian point of view, but also from the philosophical point of view. We are never wise, and actually in the ascetic Christian Orthodox tradition from the East, what we always teach and what we believe is that we have to convince ourselves every morning in the mirror that we know nothing. And that doesn't mean, of course, we should be greedy and try to learn new and more things all the time just to feel like we are important. Because this is exactly the problem. And this is the most tricky trap. If we believe we are very important, of course, each one of us, we worth in this society and in the front of the eyes of God. And we are unique and we have to offer so many things. But once we believe we are unreplaceable, or if we believe we are greater than others, how do we differ from the devil? Because he is the one who believed he was equal to God, and he was the one who felt like he should be greater to God. And this is what happened. He is still away from God. So how do we differ if we still believe? If we also believe that we are more important than our brethren, or if we try to diminish others in our close family and friends in order to elevate ourselves, this is at least foolish from our side. But what is important and what is wise from a Christian Orthodox point of view is to be grateful to the Lord for everything that we have achieved. Because each one of us has different talents. God has given to each one of us different things to offer to himself, to his family, and to other people, and share it with the community. And that doesn't mean we are more important or less important than our friends, our relatives, or other people. We are all important in a different way, each one of us. It's like we have a big puzzle with many pieces, and each one of us has to be part of this puzzle in order to have the complete picture. What matters, though, it is to understand what talents we have and how we can cultivate them, multiply them, and offer them not only to ourselves and be happy and fulfilled that we have achieved great things in our lives, but also to offer whatever we have to other people, and especially those people who do not have these talents. They have other kind of talents, and especially those people who are poor. Am I
a good businessman and I make lots of money. This is nice, I will be rich, my family will be wealthy, my children, they will study in nice colleges. But that doesn't mean I can't send a small portion, like 3% of my income, to Africa, to a mission, to a school, to a nursery home, to a hospital. That means I can join a group of people who are feeding in a church, who are feeding poor people, join them and visit those people and see them with my eyes and offer bread with my own hands. This is not going to make me poorer. I'm not going to lose my property and my money. I will give a small portion of myself and God will multiply it and will give it back to me even more and more. It's difficult, you know, theory is nice. I mean, I can tell you, I can talk to you for a couple of hours. It's nice to talk, but it's difficult to understand it and make it part of yourself. And also to try this, all these teachings of the Lord, to try to make them actual act in your everyday life. We need to think with ourselves. Most of the times we forget to talk to ourselves. We are so busy. We are working all day long. Whenever we have free time, we have social media. We have phone calls non-stop, especially me as a bishop, it never stops. I will break it, my phone down. I'm thinking seriously about that. So we have emails, we have all these things, they never stop. We are so busy, and at the end of the day, we are exhausted and we go to sleep. We never found some time for meditation, some time for prayer, we call it in the church, some time to stay alone for 30 minutes, 1 hour and read a nice book, some poetry, some theology, whatever pleases us. We never give time to ourselves, but this is unfortunately the way of living today. And we need to understand it and we need to adapt to this and try to, I can say that in English, I'm sorry, my English is horrible. I'm sorry for
You're
that.
doing very well.
But you can understand me, I suppose. How we will sleep, okay? That's not the proper word. If I use any improper word, please correct me. I've done that in America. When I was a priest in the United States, I said instead of saying ladies, I said women. One lady, she was offended. I know in England you can say that. In the United States, it is offended and offensive.
It's more accurate.
It is. That's why I tell you, if I use an improper word, please correct me. So we need to find different ways to slip from all the schedule and the program we have in our everyday life and find some time for ourselves, find some time for our wife, for our children, for our family. But what is even more difficult is, as we all know, especially those who have families and they have children, it is to find time to go together to church and pray, which is very important. Let me tell you, in the post-modern times, there was generally the idea in the whole Europe, in the whole, especially in the Western world, that we need to keep God in our heart, and it is something personal. This is not wrong, of course. It wouldn't be wise for myself to say it's not right. Of course, it's correct. Our relationship with Jesus is very personal, and each one of us has his own way to connect with the Lord. Our prayers are different. The way we think, the way we understand reality and everyday life is different. That means the way we pray and the way we understand the existence of Jesus is different. And that separates us and makes us separated a very unique individual. And of course, as human beings and as persons, we have personally to devote ourselves to God and pray with our unique way. This is generally the idea of the Western world. It's a very general term, and forgive me if I'm not very clear, which was developed in the philosophy in the 20th and 21st century in France, in the whole Europe, and in the United States at the point. That's why we have seen the last century so many people staying away from the church. We have seen decline of members, especially in the Catholic Church and in other Protestant churches. In Norway, Sweden, for example, and Finland, the Scandinavian area, you can be member in many churches, and You can have even many religions as it happens in China and in Eastern countries. So the ideology and the sense and the understanding of God is something more general, something more abstract, something that we can shape with our own hands and understand the existence of God and shape Him according to our own needs, and how I can make a God in the form that I like, that I want. Of course, to be honest, this is also not bad, but it would be bad if we try to create a new God and forget that we have to try from our side as well. Jesus came, God Himself. He received flesh and bones. We tend to forget that. The problem and heresy in quotes that we have especially in the Eastern Church, is that we are only concentrating to Jesus from heaven to earth. But we forget that Jesus is also with us from earth to heaven. Because if God had not received bones and flesh and blood, He would never sanctify us. And if we forget that, it means we forget that Christ, He was a regular man like me, you, and everyone. He was sweating, He was thirsty. The only difference it was He was out of the sea. So having the Lord in our everyday life and remembering He came here and He became a man, He gave everything that He could in order to approach us. He gave so much. Not only He was incarnated, which is for some thinkers it is scandal, it is very humiliating. God Himself, He receives flesh, which flesh, time and space and everything has been created by Him. And He decides to get into one of His creations like flesh. That's why many philosophers, especially in ancient Greek and Roman area, they never accepted Christianity and they were against because philosophically they couldn't accept it. So Christ gave everything. He was incarnated. And He was also decided to give Himself to everyone. He never performed majestic miracles like I will kill all of you, like I have fire, like a magician and destroy the Pilate and all the Romans and save Himself. He never did it. He wanted indeed to show and teach us that we have to be not humiliated with the bad way, not to be pessimistic, but in order to understand that we need to realize that our existence here in this life is very temporary, and there are greater things that are waiting for us in the afterlife. That's why He was crucified, and we decided to crucify Him. So Jesus gave everything for us. The most crazy and the most, I can't find the word. He did everything for us. And what about us? What about our side? We try to create Him and understand Him when we close our eyes and make a Jesus as we like. We never do any step to go closer to Him. He gave and He gives everything, but we hesitate to give many things. Sometimes we give nothing. Sometimes we give quite a bit. Or sometimes even worse, and this is the worst of all. We pretend to give Him many things, but in fact, we give nothing. Or it is even worse when we fall into hypocrisy. Especially if we persuade ourselves we are good Christians, good people. I help poor people, I give sometimes money for poor people to feed them. I'm going to the church, I'm receiving the Holy Communion, but at the same time I never realized that when I open my mouth, poison is coming out of it, and it's very pleasant for me to destroy others' lives. So lovely for me to say evil words for my colleagues, for friends of mine. It's so nice to make phone calls and talk for an hour, chatting and how do we say chatting, gossiping, and gossiping for other people. So our position in the church and as people in front of the eyes of Jesus is much more complicated. We read the Bible, we all remember the words from the lips of Jesus Christ as they are written in the New Testament, but we tend to forget it. or we pretend we don't remember it, or we find different excuses that we can't do what Jesus said. Don't judge because you will be judged. And we do it every day. Try to be the last in order to be the first. We know that, but we try to be the best in this life. And this is not, let me be honest, it's not a bad thing to try to be successful, whatever you do. I'm a doctor, I have to be a good doctor. I'm a businessman, I have to make profit and make money. I understand. But the problem is when all our life is a succession and the collecting of money and goods, or if we only try, if we love the glory and we try to elevate ourselves and be popular. I am a professor and I want to be the best in the world, etc. The problem is we need to understand, of course we have to try to be the best, but not to compete in a bad way. We shouldn't forget that whatever we have, we possess and we own in this life. It's for a couple of days. I mean, how many of you are older? We have some people a little bit older. Did you realize how quickly time passed if you are 50, 60, 70? No. I mean, if we are smart enough, it seems we are not, all of us. If we are smart and wise enough, we should be we should be sure 100% that very quickly I'm going to die. I mean, 20, 30 years of life, nothing. I will die like tomorrow. So if we could deeply understand that and accept it, because it's in the human nature, we try to lie to ourselves. We try to have amnesia, and we do that. We want to do that, otherwise we can't survive. But if we are smart enough and wise enough, it doesn't mean that, okay, there is no reason to live, let me die today, since 20 years is nothing. No, it's like being in vacation. You have 1 week of vacation, you're on the 5th day, 2 days are remaining, but you want to enjoy these 2 days, but you know in 2 days I'm going to go back to work. And in our case, thank God, we're not going to go back to work. We're going to go back to the real life. Saint Ignatius, the Theophoros of Antioch, he used to say when he was captured, taking him to Rome, to the lions, to feed the lions, and they stopped in Crete, in the island of Crete. And he said in one of his scriptures, this is very moving, like, let the lions eat. They wanted Christians, they wanted to save him. There were some wealthy Christians in Rome and they wanted to save him. But he was begging him in his letters, telling them, don't save me. Not because he wanted to die, not because he wanted to commit suicide, but because he was convinced, he truly believed that since this is the will of God to die in 1 week from lions, from the beasts, let it happen since this is God's will. Either way, here it was something like vacation, or on the other side, here it was a time of working, and the vacation is after I leave this world. That's why he's writing like, let me rise, the real sun. He's metaphorically, he's resembling God with the sun. And it is indeed, this is the faith of Christians. That's why it was a paradox. It was something unacceptable for Christian communities at the beginning of their life. Other people, they never realized. That's why we have so many martyrs, so many people, because they were convinced that I'm going to live forever, and this is something very short. But let me tell you, the problems are more esoteric and more personal. All the problems start from our doubts. When we doubt about the eternal life, when we doubt about the existence of God, when one small seed of unbelief is there in our heart, that makes us sad and desperate. And if after I close my eyes there is darkness forever, and if when I close my eyes there is something else, or non-existence, this is where all the problems start. The more we trust Jesus, the happier we are in this life, and the happier and more ready we are and prepared to die tomorrow morning, because we are definitely 100% sure that I die this night, and tomorrow I will be living in a much happier with Jesus. So I wish I would die tonight. That would be lovely. This is what or other Christians, they should pray like, I don't care, God, you can take me any time. I mean, since you want me here to eat chocolate and enjoy chocolate, because I'm afraid I'm not going to enjoy chocolate in that night, right? That's something that I'm going to miss. If you want to let me here to have ice cream and chocolate, give me as much time as you like. Either way, I'm going to live forever, so I don't care when I will die. And that means when we are losing someone, when our mother or even our child dies, we should be happy. That's why Christians traditionally, in the first Christian communities in Syria, Antioch, Asia Minor, Greece, Egypt, they were having a party every time they had a funeral. They had a party. They had music, instruments, and singers, and after they buried their dead, they had food and dancing, and they were happy indeed. They were not pretending. Other people, they thought they're crazy. They never understand why it happens and how it is. It can be true. But this is actually the deepest living theology that we have in the church. We can have theories, we can have nice books, we can have lectures in universities, we can talk for hours, but all these things are theory. The living theology is much more simple, simpler that we understand. That's why sometimes the simpler a person, a mind is in this life, the easier it is to go to heaven and be with Jesus. The priest in the village where I grew up, he was completely uneducated. He barely could read something. He had no idea about theology, about nothing. He couldn't understand. I mean, he has never been educated in his life, Father Antonius. But I remember his smile, his love. He had in his heart a simplicity and a love for everyone. He just believed in Jesus. He couldn't understand many things. He couldn't explain many things. But his love for Christ was so strong, and his faith was so strong, that he was so inspiring for all of us. And I remember him as a saint. You can tell me I was a child, more romantic, you see everything. But I understand that all children, they are looking to the priest and they believe it's his God. I have no idea how bad we are. But in reality, what I'm trying to tell you is the deeper you go, the deeper your thoughts go in theology and the philosophy of religion, the more difficult it is to accept it. But you have to. It is a road, how we call the road when it's ascending?
Uphill, steep.
Yeah. But we have to drive to this road. We can't avoid it. Of course, all these things, what I tell you, they should make us happy. I mean, the theology of the church, the intention is to make us happy. And when we theoretically study about the fathers of the church and the doctrines and the theology of the church, the intention is to succeed, to implement it in our everyday life. Because if we only stay in theory, we fail. It would be better for us not to be educated at all, to live in a cave in the desert of Egypt or in Mount Athos in the mountain, and have no idea for the world and just live there and pray. It would be much better, instead of knowing so many things that at the end of the day we do not apply them in our everyday life. How could be beneficial for me to read all the fathers of the church and remember by heart the Bible, the gospel, and everything and every verse, etc., if I don't, if they are not part of my life? There is no reason to be proud for having memory, for being educated, for doing what? I should be proud for going to church every day. Should I be proud because I'm fasting, I'm following all the fastings of the church, or I was praying all day long and I didn't find time to wash myself? We've seen these things. So many people, let me tell you, these are all deceits from the devil. It is very difficult. You need to accept Jesus and the Bible and his words and everything of his teachings and the teachings of the church. And we need not only to accept it, but try to do it part of our life. Otherwise, what's the reason to be Christians? What's the point? Just to say to our neighbors, I'm a Christian Orthodox, so what? Doesn't matter. Yeah, that's not gonna, it's not gonna help you at all in any way. And of course, another point which is very important for all of us is that we should never feel like we finished. I have already read the New Testament 325 times. I remember it almost by heart. That means nothing, absolutely nothing. Because we need always, the fathers of the church say, "Agi Igneste," means we need to become saints every day. It never stops. There is no any measurement like if I go to this level, I'm saint, down there are not, and there are, of course not. Our relationship with God is not countable with the human brains. The way we think, the way we understand and receive reality in the world is completely different than, and of course it would be, it would be a hybris. How is a hybris? Hybris.
Hubris.
Hybris?
Pride.
Yeah, from our side. If we even think, even if we even try to imagine how God is thinking and what is the nature of God, of course we will never understand that, because God is the source of life and we are part of His source. It is impossible. And if we try everything to put it in the forms of our brain, the way we understand the world, we are in the wrong way. We need, as Plato said, the Greek philosopher, we need to release ourselves and just try to understand the existence of God. Of course, Plato was much more before Christ, but his theories, they were implemented in Christian theology many centuries later. But we need to accept the existence of God, and we should never, it's not forgiven to ask questions. Of course, we can ask any question to ourselves or other people, but it's worthless. Because the glory we will taste and we will see once we leave this world and we leave this body behind, it's unbelievable, it's undescribable, it's something our mind cannot understand. I usually use a metaphor like, if you have a nice backyard here in your house in England, and you have a nice turtle eating the grass, and you feed her and you love this turtle, can you explain to this turtle, which you love her and she loves you, can you explain to her what Australia means, what Pacific Ocean means? Can you explain to her what means mathematics? If you talk here about Pythagoras, or say Pythagoras, is it possible for the turtle to understand? No. I don't mean we're stupid. Of course not. Let me take it in another way. If your wife is pregnant and you talk to the fetus, yes, yeah, fetus, and you try to explain about Aristotle, is it possible the fetus to respond, understand about Aristotle? No. I could tell it's not the proper time. There will be a moment, this thing which is alive in the belly of your wife, it will be able to understand Aristotle and maybe be a professor of philosophy, but it's not the proper time. Sometimes with my imagination, I never read that, I just imagined myself, I hope it's not heresy. but sometimes I think the same way. I mean, why should I try to break my head and understand what God means, what it will be when I will go to the other life? I think this is an hybris, as we say in ancient Greek. I think it is an hybris. I mean, it's impossible to understand, because I'm pretty sure when I leave this world, God will give me many, many more things, and I don't expect to be like Him. I don't care, and I don't want. If I am with God, I will be happy. I will be part of Him. That's why in the theology we believe we are cells of the body. Each one of us is a cell of the body of Christ. That means we are in Christ. We are partly God's. I mean, since we are with Christ, we are with Him. If we are not with Him and we are away, we live alone. It's like being abandoned in a dark desert. So this is how we should think and about this life. The moment the fetus comes out and it's a baby, it is a difficult time. Thank God we don't remember it. nature, God who created us, He took care so we have no memories of this horrible moment when we leave. It is a horrible moment because we have the warmth of the womb of our mother, the blood, we have food, we have everything. Suddenly we have air, we are in an environment, we have no idea what it is. What am I supposed to do now? Where am I? What is this? I believe it's in the same way. God is not to just abandon us. The moment we will leave this body, something much, much greater is expecting us. And if Jesus would never come, we would never have idea what's going to happen. That's why we have many religions before Christ in so many areas of the world, China, Mesopotamia, ancient Greece, etc. But since Christ came here in order to open our eyes and teach us, we trust Him, we believe to Him, we believe to His words, and we know exactly what's going to happen. And we need to be prepared, and we need to be happy, because we are not in the darkness anymore. We know exactly what will happen, so we shouldn't care how it will happen and what will be in the next life. It will be, and we are pretty sure it's going to be much better, and we're going to be wiser, and everything will be much, much better. That's why we should be happy for the moment that we die. All these things, as I told you before, it's difficult to implement it and accept it. And theory is nice, theory is beautiful, but if I tell you you're going to die tonight, we will be. It's a difficult moment. It's difficult to accept it. We understand that. In the Apocrypha, which is historically they have some their worth, but not as gospels. Historically, we know, at least if we trust these sources, that even Panagia, even the Theotokos, the Virgin Mary, she was seeing Jesus. Although she knew who He was, she knew her soul was God. She might be a little bit confused, but she knew He was coming from God. But she was sad seeing Jesus on the cross. As people, we can understand, we will feel sad when someone dies. When my mother dies, I'm gonna cry, because we still live in this world, and everything is trapped in time. And if I live for years, I'm not gonna see her for 30, 40 years. And as a human being, I'm weak. And unfortunately, I have to live in space and time for the moment. So I will miss my mother. So yes, I'm sad and I'm crying because I buried her and she's dying. She died. But that shouldn't let me be disappointed. Even though if I bury with my own hands my child, if my son dies, which is much, much worse. We have to trust Jesus. Okay, I told you enough about general theology. Because I need to leave, I should have already left. About some practical things. Father Stephen, he's organizing very well the seminary. He's doing lectures. Twice a month.
Once a month at the moment.
Once a month, yeah.
Yeah, once a month.
For the moment. But we give them material so they can, curriculum so they can study, yeah.
Yes.
Let me tell you, you don't need to stay in class in order to learn theology and learn about the church. You can do it yourself. Each one of us, if you like theology, if you're interested in theology, you can buy nice books, read them, concentrate it, and understand, and you can ask questions to Father Stephen, and you can have nice discussions. It's not going to make you a good theologian or whatever if you just attend the seminary or you go to the university or the college or whatever. But it's nice. If you show interest in theology, because this is about the seminary, it's nice to learn new things. It's nice to try to deepen in Christianity and in the Orthodox tradition. It's travel, experience, journey in the Orthodox theology, especially if you dive into the mysticism of the 15th century, Gregory Palamas, etc. You will love. There are so many things to understand about the Eastern Orthodox tradition in prayer and in the mystic way of life, living and theology. I'm sure you will enjoy it, and I hope all of you who show this interest, you will decide to be with Father Stephen. You don't have to lose anything. You will have the opportunity and the guidance of Father to learn some new things. But I tell you, you can also enrich your knowledge by buying books yourself, nice Orthodox books, and try to read. If you don't read, no one is gonna implant your theology or anything in your mind. It's a matter of personal, if you indeed love that. Do you have any questions? Because I need to leave. You're very lucky I was not your professor.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for coming. We're very grateful that you popped in on your way off to commentary and.
Yeah, I need to go to the meeting now.
Yes. So thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
God bless you.
Thank you.
You will stay for
yeah, for a bit. Yes.
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Ali Pomoni.
We will. Yes.
God bless.
We've had to come at the start and speak, so it's at the end. So we've done this. So we've done the induction. So we're done. I did want to ask one more question. It was on the whole issue of like, in today's culture, you hear parents, grandparents, everyone, teachers saying to, especially the youth and the young, to take pride in what you do, to have a bit of pride, I'm proud of you. I'm just finding what's the Orthodox mindset on these things, and how we to instill pride in the youth. This is something I talked to my son about. Right. Now it's really difficult. Like I was trying to dress it back and lessons what is popular as opposed to you and trying to say yourself. I don't think I'm doing that. I just don't like it. It sounds like it's like so much pride. It's like, so yeah, I'm so proud of you after that because I'm still trying to navigate imagine the things that
Right on. There.
You're from Bulgaria? Okay, so you recognise that obviously straight away. I mean, it's not really Orthodox.
No, there is.
Yeah.
But this is all opposing business.
Obviously, I've got no idea what it says. Yeah.
Right, if you've got that here, you want to.
Right, Sister Diabuli is going to talk about the Centaurian project. She's been given 8.5 minutes. So, go.
This is all about the fact that I gave them a very long lecture on relics the other day, which
My goodness.
there are some subjects when you do them, even when you cut them down, they're very difficult to cut any more if you've just got 24 hours to cut it down in. Well, the Synaxarian project really began from Father Stephen because on Thursday mornings in Shrewsbury we have a service, a little service, and at the end of it, well, he said to me after several saints coming up in the prayers, and he said, I don't know half of these people, kind of thing. You know, who is this person who we have? Can you do something about them? And tell us something about them, find something about them. So I did this, and I'm afraid I thought at first it was just going to be a half page or something, you know, which is what ideally we want at the end, to be able to do some half-page Synaxarians for people to read in church. But the trouble is with British saints, they're very ancient, and they're often, histories have been very not compiled at all in most cases. You have a life which may, if you are very lucky, be within 200 years of the date of their death. You have, otherwise you have something in the 12th century. And you have a whole load of accretions, and you get confusions with other people. Oh, he's got that name, so he must be the same saint. And if you look at the tradition about that saint, you find out that the guy would have needed to be about 250 years old, maybe at least, to have been in all the places he was meant to be. So I am not of the kind of mentality that I can cope with simply putting something down which may not be real. So this has become now something which involves a lot of historical research. Okay, if we put them in that place at that particular time, what is happening at that time, which is often very useful. For instance, I've just been working on somebody called Winwallow. He, according to tradition, he was a saint in Devon who went to Brittany. Now the question is why he went to Brittany and when he went to Brittany. And about half the accounts will say he went to Brittany because of a plague. The other half will say he went to Brittany because of Saxon raids. In fact, when you look at it, the Saxon raids didn't start till 200 years after he died. So that kind of, in that particular part of the UK. So that knocks that one out. And then one looks, as Chris would have understood, at who around was there from their family, and there are often quite a lot of, people who build up families of saints. They just, this is just what happens. So I started looking at that. So now I begun to doing this synaxarion. I would say we've got about half of the saints in the British synaxarion at the moment. They are researched as far as possible. Where there's an alternative story, which I haven't used, I've put it in the footnotes. And I also put in as the original sources and secondary sources as far as I know them. Sometimes I can't read an original source. I know it's there, so I'll put it in. But if it's in ancient Welsh, I'm sorry, I haven't got that far yet, have you? And they're the same for medieval English. I may be a bit better at Latin. I haven't either of those. But so I've started working with this and sending it out to people who would like it once a month at the beginning of the month. I try to get that by the first of the month, but that doesn't always quite work. And I've also got the compilation, which are in those two books there in PDF, so you can ask me and I can do the whole thing, and then put you on the list to update you. But what is also important is people to help with this. Just in the last couple of weeks, somebody has turned up who has said, oh, I would love to do original research for you. Great! January, I've hardly got any of the saints of January, all the ones during during Paschal Tide and Great Lent. It's really difficult to find time to research saints during that period. So I'm going to put him on to getting me, because I think he will do the early traditions and really get the resources as well as he can. So the idea is that he will do that, and he will give me as far as he can a timeline, which will, if he's any good at it, it'll help enormously. Another problem has been editing, and somebody has just turned up who was a publisher and who is willing to consider editing. Because when you are rewriting something, it's amazing how many times you find that you have pasted in half of the same phrase or something, or just made a silly mistake. And the other things needed is someone who could work on on editing my notes, making 100% sure that they're okay and that I haven't just grabbed something from somewhere without acknowledging it. The footnotes are always the worst thing of anything. But there has now been a suggestion that when it's finished, which please God won't be too many more years if other people are working on it, it could then be published and could be a resource for the church. You know, a resource one rather than a short version one, which people can take their own short versions, but also the person who's been a publisher is quite interested in doing short versions. So we might be able to actually do a fully researched one, which gives background, plus a shorter one, which is more usable for life in church. Yeah. That's about it, really.
There's a man I've seen advertising his work that he has done in a way of presenting historical information on a computer, over the internet. So it's a number of different timelines, and he's just building up more and more and more. And now he's offered it out to the general public with the opportunity of uploading their own historical research and their own timelines. So this is growing into a large body of information.
So which period?
I think it's a timeline that stretches very widely. So
yeah,
you know, it can go back as far as you like, or right up to now.
I'm very interested to see that.
As soon as I find that again.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So, of course, the other thing is, if we want to paint icons of saints, which is something we do a lot of, and I was surprised the other day because I think we're going to do British saints in the Shrewsbury calendar next time. And so Father Pandalinen asked me to look out, you know, to make some recommendations as to saints and so on. And I thought, well, as this is an icon calendar, I've got to find out what there is in terms of icons of British saints. And even though Aidan has done a prodigious amount of work, it is still very difficult to find 12 icons of an interesting saint for a calendar, you know, so I'm thinking, my goodness. But one of the things of doing the Synaxarium project is you do come from time to time against upon actual descriptions of what this person was like or what they looked like. There aren't all those many, but they're there. And you've also got the character, because if you're painting an icon of someone of whom the background is unknown, you've got to arrive at a prototype. That's what's been done with Elijah. Nobody's really, you know, done a camera shot of Elijah or somebody like that. So you have to look at the circumstances of their life, you have to look at their character, what is known about the time, and from that say, well, who is this person? And how can I best depict the essence, the spiritual essence of this person, really? Because we aren't worried about whether he had dropsy in his old age or whether he had wore multiple bifocals or something. You know, we might be interested if he had a wooden leg. There is one saint with a wooden leg. There are ways of depicting things which you learn in the icon tradition, which can be used in building up reasonably authentic prototypes of who this person is for veneration. So this is another reason for doing the workshop program that I'm starting on practical icons. It's 4 years, so it's not an easy thing. It's 4 years, once a month, with homework in between. But the idea is to build up people who can actually understand the process well enough, not just copy an icon, but understand the process enough to design, but without ending up being somewhere else in tradition and having their own little idea of where things are, because we don't, in the icon world, put our own idea of who St. Peter is or what he could have been like, you know, if he'd had breakfast at my local bar or something. You know, you say you have to look at the tradition. So there are certain principles of design which have to be met in a theological icon. So again, that fits in with the Italian. So I'm going to say no more. And I'm sure I've got more than 8.5 minutes.
Again, what struck me?
Which calendar do you, I mean, for the names of the saints?
Yes.
Coming from the other side of Office Dyke, I'm curious, which calendar are you using to source the names?
I'm using as my main thing the lectionary we're using in the Thyatira Church, the one there. So I'm starting, but on each of them at the beginning, I have a kind of thing for, I forget what I've called it, this alternatively names this person was known by. Because when you're doing the research, you can find half a dozen. And sometimes I've been stuck on somebody trying to find information. Who on earth is this person? How do I find any information? I've been absolutely stuck. And then suddenly I managed to read a source which has a different name on it. And the whole thing opens up like magic.
Yes, I think Chris and I have found that when we visit a site where a saint was, we learn such a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
And we see history through our own modern lens, forgetting that in the times of 693, 700 or so, when there were many British saints, we forget how powerful the monasteries were. And Chris and I found that there were frequently monasteries containing 3,000 monks.
Yeah.
This sort of thing.
Yeah.
So it's not surprising to find that you would find stories associated with two monks of the same name, and then those stories getting merged. It's very difficult to pick out.
Yeah, it's very easy to do that. There's also the point that sometimes the actual monastery and the monastic school will be merged, because all of these monasteries had, the early ones had very thriving monastic schools, which everyone who could go there went to. And it's one of the big ways of teaching the gospel and developing the gospel is to have a good monastic school. Which is usually based at the cathedral, or it's a big church somewhere else in the area. And also what is surprising continually is that you start by thinking, oh, the Celts and the Britons are in this peculiar little world of their own, this peculiar little bubble. And then you realize that in fact they've got a continental influence here and a continental influence there, and you're suddenly realizing that they themselves, rather like St. Irenaeus, saw themselves as a much bigger milieu and were much more au fait with what was happening in other places than we give them credit for. What is one of the sad things which we have lost, which is really post-Normans, a little bit post-Whitby, is the early councils in Britain, because I find tantalizing references that the saint or other was at a particular council. There's one St. Patrick and St. Bridget in Ireland, and a particular council is referenced. But we know nothing about, and it was a big one, and it had, basically there was a clergy meet, and there was a whole laity kind of festival going on around it. that's almost all we know of it, you know. You can't find it because records have not been kept or records have been lost.
Destroyed from the sacking of the monasteries, possibly. They lost so much, and so
And
many
then
relics and
all,
all sorts.
Yeah,
Invasions.
yeah.
It's a tragedy.
Well, this is part of the very important work that the seminary does. This is another arm of what we do. So, you know, and the Synaxarium project for Britain is an amazingly important piece of work that if you join us, you can also help with. That's it. Thank you, sister.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And so, if you would like to take part in the seminary, you're very welcome. Perhaps you'd like to sign a form or take some information. Please take some information for your communities where you are, because there may be other people who would like to come or be interested. Tell them that we're relatively normal, we're not as odd as you had originally thought.
Jury's out.
So sort of say, pop in a good word. You will see we're under the Archdiocese of Theatera in Great Britain, but we're very happy to receive anybody who would like to come from any jurisdiction. And indeed, the people who come don't have to be Orthodox, though I have to say it has been quite difficult for those people who aren't when we have had non-Orthodox people. I haven't had very many, but there have been one or two who have joined and they've fitted in with us, and, but it hasn't been very easy for them. So, right, Melangeth, where are you?
I'm here.
Do you need to say other things?
Well, yes, we have a second part of the summer school. There are leaflets on the back when Abel Hart is going to come and talk to us about how to transform these lovely Anglican buildings that we seem to be inheriting into a proper Orthodox space. Obviously, you know, he's allowed in his field.
He's very good at that.
He is.
So get people to come to that, clergy and so on, because he will give you some ideas about what is possible and what is not possible, what works and what can be absolutely terrible. We were just talking to Mr. Philippides, who was here. When I was ordained in Birmingham, they had decided to paint lines of blue and white and blue and white all the way up. All the bricks were painted this, and it looked absolutely terrible. And if you went, there were these enormous wax babies hanging from the ceiling. So it was not good. So you can make an awful lot of mistakes, and you know, beauty is very important for us as Orthodox. Beauty is very important. If you get it wrong, then you actually can put people off. And there are churches, I have from time to time had to serve a liturgy in a church where the church just shriveled you. You know, there was a black ceiling and endless steps, and there were sort of 10 of us in a church that could fit 500. And just awful, just awful. So please get as many people as you can to come to that, because it's useful.
It is. Also, don't let anyone be under the impression that the seminary is just for men. It is not just for men. This is an all-person ministry in the Orthodox Church, and women are the teachers of the children, they're the catechists of adults, and there are many other things as well. So
they run the church, but they allow men to think that they lead it.
There you go. So please, it's lovely to have all you men here, but get some,
in fact, it's
women.
great.
You're going to crack that one up, it's just,
so
yes.
I wear the trousers, don't I, Melinda?
Yes, get some women to come as well from your parishes. Don't let them think that this is just for men. Yes, obviously, it's lovely to be able to have men here to go into the ordained.
Can we have this recorded, please?
Purposes.
Recorded. Someone's recording.
I'm just joking. And you know, there are lots of ancillary things that come off TMES, like the Orthodox Women of Britain group.
Actually, traditionally, we've had about half and half, haven't we? I think.
Well, latterly we haven't.
No,
Latterly
just
we
we
haven't.
haven't.
Also, an equivalent men's group, because the majority of men are not ordained. All of you, like women, are living ordinary lives in the Orthodox Church. And, you know, it could be as difficult sometimes for you to know where you fit in and what your ministry is and what to do as it can for other people. So there are two groups, Orthodox Women of Britain, Orthodox Men of Britain, that's Henry's doing, I have to tell you. We have interesting we have interesting speakers once a quarter and so on. So all of this is on the webpage, for which Sister is the main person.
Anybody who wants to take it off my back can.
And if you want any information about anything more that we do, that's where you go.
So there's information over there.
And there's information over there. Take some flyers about the next summer school. Take some forms away.
Have you got the dates about June?
I haven't as yet, because yes.
Right, so anyway, when that comes
And
up.
when that comes up, you'll know all about.
Well,
the
keep
information.
watching the page.
Yes,
I promise I'm going to dedicatedly have some time
Keep the
for
news
it.
up to date.
You want also buy a mug.
If I do it
You
once
can
a
also
week.
buy merchandise, yes. Got merch.
The merch at the bottom of the page, yes.
So we have some of these to take away to your parishes to tell people about the seminary and a bit more about it, contact information. We have these about Aiden, which I'd also like you to take away to your parishes, please. We have bookmarks. You have one, you can have some more, we've got lots. We have a form to fill in if you want to come and join us in October, or you can just email me, and my email is plastered all over everything. So
The mugs you have to pay for.
the mugs you have to pay for. And please do take your notebooks and pens home, that's the whole purpose.
Good.
I hope you've had an enjoyable day, and I hope we'll see you all again, and if you want a coffee for your journey, the water's hot. So
Peter, come with me and I'll show you the library.
and you can chat to people, you know, the rest of us who are here, if you have any questions or queries or anything.
Do you want to say the library? The library. Do you want to come and see the library?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind that.
I think you'll have to do it without saying
By the way, yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah. Yeah. Really?
Do you know where it is?
Okay.
Okay.
Take one of the